Now that we have the beginnings of a two-dimensional level, maybe we should have a player character to actually play this level with, right? So that we can see things like the collision working and all that kind of stuff. We already have some sprites set up for the character. So if we go into sprites, we have this little idle animation. And the wonderful thing is, if we just go back into content real quick and we make a blueprint, we can go into all characters, or we can search through all classes, and we can see paper character is a child of the character class. This takes away the skeletal mesh and puts in a paper character that has the possibility for like a flipbook to play on it instead. But since we're using PaperZD on top of Paper2D, which is highly recommended to be able to do, I'm going to do a PaperZD character just because it has an animation component on it as well. And an animation component will allow me to use animation blueprints from PaperZD, which just makes this entire process a little bit smoother to work with. So highly recommended to do. It's entirely possible to hard code a bunch of this stuff within your character itself. PaperZD just makes it a little bit more approachable. So we're going to go for a PaperZD character, and I'll call this the BP player. And opening that up, we can see we have, just as a normal character, we have this collider, and then we have our sprite. We set our source flipbook to the default animation that we just want to see in the viewport. Then the animation component itself will have an animation class assigned to it, which will then influence that as we go. So let's set this to player idle. We can see the size of this thing. Now let's put it roughly into place, and then also maybe change the perspective from perspective to right. That way we can see it without like any weird perspective distortions. And maybe the capsule radius needs to be a little bit bigger for this guy. And let's set the capsule half height to slightly bigger as well. And then we move. Well, the capsule half height actually seemed pretty good. So now we have our 2D character, which doesn't do anything yet, but we can at least assign this to be our player start. So let's real quick make a game mode to set that. So this will be our 2D game mode, where we can set the default pawn class to our BP player. Then in our project settings, we'll just look for game mode, and the default game mode will be our 2D game mode. So now we have everything set up to spawn in our player. So let's do a player start, and we can put that anywhere we want. And you'll be able to see that the time map that we made last time is quite tiny. And that is because they are 16 by 16 pixel sprites. And just as we did with the player character sprite here, we scaled it up by 10 times. We'll actually need to do the same thing here in our tile map. So if we go into our tile map, we can see we have the pixels per unit as well. We've set that to 0.1 before, so let's do the same thing here. That scales it up by 10 times. And as you can see, it is quite big in comparison. Let's go back to the faster camera movement speed. And it might be a little bit too big. This is a matter of experimentation a little bit. I'm going to say that that is definitely slightly too big in this case. If you're making a proper game and you have like a pixel artist, specifically if you're making a pixel art style game, do make sure that these settings match between your tile maps and your characters, because you do want the pixels across your game to be the same size. For this example, I don't really care about that, so I'm just going to set this to like 25, so that's about 4 times the size. But that means that the pixels on my character will be significantly larger than the pixels in the background, which is not exactly what you want. I'm also going to make the separation a little bit wider, so let's set that to 50 instead. So now we should be able to play the game, except that we don't yet have a camera on this thing. So let's add a spring arm component real quick and rotate that around so that it's facing toward your sprites, and maybe move it up a little bit. And then I'm going to give this arm length a length of like 700, something like that, so that it's a little bit further away. Then let's put a camera onto that, which we're just going to zero out the location and rotation for, so that's just at the end of that spring arm. And now when we place this character, we'll look through this camera. One important thing that you probably want to do is go into your spring arm. Let's call this something like camera boom. But more importantly, we want to go into the camera collision settings and set do collision test to false. Otherwise, the camera might start like punching in when we go past something, and we don't want to have that happen. In 3D games, that's really nice. In 2D games, you generally don't really want that. So if we play the game now, we will spawn in as our character, which can't move around. And you can see, as I said, the pixels on our character are significantly larger than they are on the environment. To the point where I think maybe we actually want to just go into these sprites and just mess around a little bit with their size. So we go into here, property matrix, and we'll set this maybe to 0.2 instead. That does make a change in our actual character though, so now we need to go back in and set our capsule component to something new. So this is the kind of thing that you want to get right early on, because if you want to change this around at a later date, it does become a little bit of a pain to deal with. Because you need to go into like a bunch of different places and then move around a bunch of different stuff, and you just kind of don't want to do that. But we have fixed this now, and let's see where our camera boom is at. It's a little bit high up, so let's make it a little lower down. And maybe we can set this field of view to like 110 as well. So it's a little bit of a wider field of view. And suddenly this looks a little bit better for like the scale of our game, and the pixels are roughly the same size now. Now, if you don't want any parallaxing at all in your game because you want to replicate something that is a lot more retro than maybe a SNES game, maybe you want to do like a classic Game Boy game style, you can change your camera's projection mode from perspective to orthographic, which gets rid altogether of its field of view. And it's effectively everything that it sees is entirely flat. So it's not going to have any parallaxing at all, and everything will just be entirely flat. You can see here the edges of everything line up perfectly because everything is just being rendered as like flat depth. Whereas if I go back into perspective mode, you can see that the edges will be ever so slightly misaligned because of the perspective. Because these pixels are a little further away, so they're a little bit smaller, so they don't fully encompass the entire view here, which can be a little bit annoying to deal with. So maybe sometimes orthographic mode is more what you're looking for. That's entirely up to you and the game you're making. For now though, let's add some character movement input. So we don't have any input actions or anything like that set up yet, because this is an entirely empty project. So what we're going to do is I'm going to make a folder called player, where we're going to put the player character in, and we'll also make a mapping input context. So this will be our input context. We'll get back to that in a moment. And then we'll also make a input action for movement. We'll set the value type for this input action to being a float, because we want to be able to either move left or right, so either to the positive or the negative direction, or stand still altogether. And then we'll also make an input action for jumping, which can remain a bool, because jumping is just either you're jumping or you're not jumping. So then in the input context, we add the mappings for both the jump and the movement. The jump will just map to the spacebar, and the movement we will map to the right key, and we'll add another mapping for the left key. And now the wonderful thing is we need to add in a modifier to the left to negate it, to make it negative. So that way, if we press right, it'll get a value of +1. If we press left, it'll get a value of -1. I have an entire, like, 2 or 3 videos about the input system that you can watch if you need more depth there. But for now, suffice to say that left will be negated. And then you might want to add the same thing for the D and the A key as well, of course. And then the A will, of course, be negated as well. And now back in our player, I have deleted the overlap and event tick, because we don't really need those at the moment. We can just do input action jump, which is going to be fairly easy to do. When we start it, we just jump. That's a pre-made function by Unreal that we can just use. And when it is completed, we stop jumping. So just stop jumping. That's the easy bit. On input action move, that's a little bit more annoying, but you can see that this has a float that it uses instead of a bool. We're going to add movement input with this, and the scale value will be the speed at which we move. So that can be like a variable or whatever. The world direction, we're going to split the structure pin. Usually you get like 2 axes for this, and you do all kinds of weird, like more complicated stuff for a 3D game. For a 2D game, this is fairly easy, because the world direction that we're going to be moving in, we can just go here and see if we select literally any of these actors. The red arrow is the direction that the tile map is going in, so we're moving in the X direction. It's just as easy as that. So we don't need to be moving in the Y or in the Z, we just hook up the action value to our world direction X, and then whenever this is triggered, which will be every frame because we don't have any like specific custom triggers set up, we add that movement input. Now, these input actions don't work unless we assign the mapping context that we created to our player. So on begin play, we get our controller, which will be a player controller. So we need to cast to player controller because we're going to need to access a function specifically for player controllers. Because we're going to need to get the local player input subsystem or something along those lines. The enhanced input local player subsystem. It's a whole mouthful. You need to get that. Then we want to check just to be sure whether or not that is valid. Because if it's not, we don't want to use it in any way at all. But if it is valid, what we want to do is we want to add a mapping context, and we'll add the mapping context that we just created. And that will allow us to actually use these input actions. So with that, now if we play the game, we can move to the sides and we can jump. We can not jump very high, and the gravity is a little floaty, but that's where we go. Hey, we're using Unreal Engine. We have this character movement component with a bunch of settings that we can tweak. So we can set the gravity scale to be much higher, like 2.5 times as high. Then we can go into here and set the jump Z velocity to something higher, like 1100. And we can even set our air control to be significantly higher. So if we set our air control to being a value of 1, we get more control in the air. And the falling lateral friction is the amount that you slow down in the air if you're not pressing any direction, essentially. So if we set this to a fairly high value, something like 5 or 10, that'll also make our in-air inputs a little bit more like responsive. So now we can see we jump higher, but we also fall down a little bit faster. And this feels a little bit more like what you might expect a platformer to feel like. And there's a bunch of tweaking that you can do to make this feel exactly the way you want it to feel like. And if we come up to the player itself, if we select that instead of the character movement component, we have the max jump count. So we can even very easily make a double jump here. So if we set that to 2, we can see that we can jump twice. And all that like platforming goodness, actually like the engine does take care of that for you. And now that we can move around, you can more easily see the parallaxing of the different layers happening. Which again, if you don't want that to happen, you can either set the layer separation to a very tiny amount, or you can set the camera in here to use orthographic projection instead, which will make everything just entirely flat. So everything, like you can see, there's no parallaxing going on anymore at all now. I like the parallaxing though, so we're going to stick with perspective. Now that we have all that set up, the next thing to do is animation, and that's why I picked a PaperZD character and not just a paper character, because we have this animation component that is supplied for us. But I think we're going to do that in the next video, just to keep things segmented a little bit. So thanks for watching. If you want the project files up until this point, or the project files for the finished course as a whole, so where we end up at the very end of this with everything that I show off implemented from start to finish, there's a link down below in the description to the Patreon page, or for YouTube members to download those project files, either a per episode progression or the entire series as a whole. And a very big thank you to all my Patreons. You can see them on screen right now. If you want to help support the channel or get any of the project files in any of my tutorials, there's a link down below to the Patreon page to support me, or alternatively as a YouTube member. And of course, an extra massive thank you to my Cave Digger tier supporters, Sir J. Thomas,